Good afternoon, everyone who's signed in so far this afternoon. We're going to go ahead and start the webinar shortly. This is Brandon Garner, Sales Manager with Superior Trucking Payroll Service. Probably going to start probably around 12:32, just to give a few more people the opportunity to sign in. But thank you again for attending today's webinar. Thank you, everyone who's just signed in recently. This is Brandon with Superior Trucking Payroll Service. We're going to go ahead and give it a couple more minutes before we start the webinar, just to allow a few more individuals the opportunity to sign in. Thank you again. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get everything going. As before, my name is Brandon Garner. I am the sales manager here at Superior Trucking Payroll Service, and thank you today for joining our webinar on forgiveness of the PPP loan for trucking companies. Quick, side procedures. All of your lines have been muted for this webinar. If you have any questions, please enter them in the question box shown below, shown here. Do not click on the black X or you'll be exited from the webinar. Quick things is that what we do for trucking companies, we are a full service payroll provider for trucking companies. Our services have been specifically designed for the trucking industry. All the normal features of payroll, including garnishments, W-2s, and 1099s, are all built into the payroll cost. But we also do customization of check stubs. We can also build customization reports, and we know trucking. Quick note about our speaker today. Mike Ritzema is the president and CFO of Superior Trucking Payroll Service. He has 20 years of payroll experience, 10 years in the trucking finance, and he's a former CFO for a trucking company right here in Grand Rapids with about 75 trucks, and he's a member of many transportation associations. And he will be leading today's webinar, and I'll go ahead and pass it on over to him.
Thank you, Brandon. Today's webinar about getting your PPP loan forgiven for a trucking company. Hopefully will be informative. It's going to bounce around a little bit. This form is kind of goofy. I know it's a government form, but it's still kind of goofy. Here's what we're going to talk about today. A few quick notes. Before we start, I knocked these out for all these coronavirus webinars. And then we're going to go through the basics of the PPP loan forgiveness. We're going to talk about some things that can be included and some things that cannot be included in the loans, in the forgiveness part of the loan. And then where we're going to spend the majority of the time is walking through a sample form, just to kind of show you each line and how it works and what you're going to do with it. We're not going to use real numbers, of course. We're not going to, obviously, I don't know any of your situations or enough that I would comment on it. So just to give you an idea of how it all comes together. And then we'll talk about ways to get through these crazy times. And then there'll be time for questions and answers. And as Brandon said, if you have questions, you can type them in the question box at any time. And if we don't answer it during the webinar, because the webinar is going to run, it could potentially run long, we'll answer it later. And if we get a lot of questions, we're going to send questions and answers to everybody. So with that said, here are a few quick notes that I like to put in these kind of, when we're talking about laws and medical things. I am not a lawyer, attorney, banker, lender, doctor, other medical professional. I'm an epidemiologist, which I didn't know what that was 6 months ago. I'm not any of those things. I'm an administrator who knows trucking and can help fill out these forms. We're going to focus on the forms and the changes and the things like that. We're not going to worry about the politics of any of it. Who could have done what? I don't care about that. That's not our point here. We're here to help trucking families, which is why we do these webinars. We want to help your families as owners or finance people. We want to help the truck drivers' families and all these things do that, which is why we provide these webinars at no cost to anyone. And then I wanted to share this last thing I got in an email a couple of days ago from a bank that I work with. After the SBA put out the loan forgiveness documents that we're going to be talking about today, they went on to say, basically, yeah, the SBA sent something out, but it's not nearly complete. And so what they're saying is the bank wants, they're like, we'll let you know what we need from you and we'll keep looking at this, but it doesn't provide great guidance to the bank, the documents that we're going to go over, but it is a really good start. And I think it's going to be the shell, the basic idea of how we're going to do this. But it brings me to a point of one of the main things in this is that the bank is the one who gets to decide to forgive your loan. They have to follow SBA guidelines to do it, but it's making the bank happy is what this is all about. And so we'll walk through the forms and we'll walk through all these things. But if your bank tells you to fill it out differently, do it the way that they're telling you to do it, because there's no point in being right and not getting your loan forgiven. That's not the goal here. So I just thought it was a really good email by the bank and to say, hey, look, there's more coming, and there is. These are a couple of really nice links. They're also on our website at truckingpayroll.com/coronavirus. We are going to be sending the slideshow to everybody. So you don't worry about trying to copy these long things down. There's no point to it. I guess if you really want to, I can't stop you, but the SBA forgiveness application is what we're going to go through now. And then the payroll protection plan loan info and definitions from the Federal Register, that's from the CARES Act, really. But it's good because, as we'll see as we go through this, they define some things better in that second link than you get in this SBA form. And we'll talk about that. Again, these links are on our website, and we'll email all these to you. But I just wanted to let you know kind of the source documents of what we're going to go through today and where you can find them. So with that, let's go to forgiveness basics. There's payroll costs and there's non-payroll costs. We're going to start with the payroll costs. Besides wages, what else is eligible? Vacation, sick pay, all that stuff. Yeah, that's eligible. All that kind of stuff that you're paying out to the employees. Group health insurance, to the extent of the employer's contribution to it, is deductible. You can't deduct $100 from somebody's check and then try and get that back in the health insurance. That's double dipping. They're not going to go for that. Employer funded retirement, which would be a 401k match or a profit sharing or a simple IRA match, depending on the size of your company. Just as a side note, employer-funded retirement is a really good and fairly affordable recruiting tool and retention tool. The drivers that are going to want this are the ones that are going to stick around and the ones that are looking long-term. And I think those are going to be the drivers that they're going to be the ones you want to keep. I understand it's easy for me to spend your money. I just want to throw that out there since we're talking about it. SUTA, which is state unemployment, and local employer taxes. If you have taxes that the employer has to pay at the state or local level, those are also included in what your eligible payroll costs. Here's some things that are not included. The employer share of federal taxes, the Social Security and Medicare, which is FICA, and FUTA, which is federal unemployment tax. Those things are not eligible payroll costs. Why? I don't know. I didn't make the law. I'm just worried about what is. 1099s, your owner operators, are not eligible payroll costs. It's very specifically laid out that those are not eligible. To the extent too that, and there was talk originally that the 1099s might be eligible right when the law was getting passed, but it's been specifically defined that it's not. But again, if your bank lets you have it, then take it, I guess. The 1099 people are supposed to get their own loans, was the idea, that they're supposed to get their own PPP loan for being self-employed. Also, wages in excess of $100,000 per year annualized to any employee. That $15,384 number, that's 8 weeks at $100,000 a year. That's the most you're going to get for anybody. And so, you know, those, if you paid somebody more than that, you can only take that much of that 15,000 as to be applied for forgiveness. Just still a lot of money. Let's talk about eligible non-payroll costs. Mortgage obligations and rent obligations. I kind of want to put those together. They don't restrict it to only real property. Real property is land. So they say real and personal property. So if I were you, and this is, I think, a thing that some people might miss, equipment payments. You know, you're renting tractors, you're renting trailers, you owe on a trailer, you owe on a tractor. I would try and include it. Again, your bank may say no, and if they do, and this becomes material in that it reduces the amount of your loan forgiveness, you know, if you're one of our clients, let us know and we'll talk to your bank. I don't know that it's going to help, but we'll try. But yeah, you know, that's significant because you're going to shoot with all your tractor and trailer rent payments and loans. You're going to knock out this money pretty quickly. Utility payments are gas, electric, water, phone, and internet. There is some in the forgiveness document that I had referred to earlier. They talk about transportation utilities, and I had someone who signed up for the webinar, I'm not sure if he's here or not, had asked if that meant fuel for trucks. And unfortunately, again, going to the second item that I listed there, those links, they specifically say no. Transportation utilities are about delivery of the gas or electric to your house or something like that. And I think it's more on the East Coast. It's not fuel for your trucks, unfortunately. That's too bad too. That would have been a nice little win for you guys, but it's not gas. It's standard issue utilities. One of the important things is this cannot exceed, these things together cannot exceed 25% of your loan forgiveness amount. And that's where I think you're going to get limited on the truck and trailer payments as well. So, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. But you should all, okay, I'm painting with a broad brush, so it may not apply to everybody, but this 25% you should be able to max out if you need to, between rent and trailer rent and tractor rent and truck payments and building payments and utilities, because especially if you're providing cell phones to everybody, they don't just say landline phones. So that you should be able to knock out this 25% with minimal fuss. And now these are a couple of questions that I've been getting already. What records do I need to give to the bank? Do I need to provide records to the bank? For our clients, they call us and say, can you send me the reports I need to send to the bank? Send the bank whatever they want, whatever they ask for, and they'll have a standard package. Send it to them. Detailed payroll records, as much as they want. If they just want a wage report, or if they just want to see wage and health insurance or whatever they want, you send it to them. I mean, you're going to get a significant amount of money. So I wouldn't argue with the bank about it. Once we get closer to the end of the 8 weeks, which will be another 3 or 4 weeks, I think we're going to start seeing documents from banks, especially the big banks. They're going to probably lead the charge and say, these are the things we want. If you're a client of ours, let us know which set you need and we'll get them to you. You don't have to, we'll try and save you some of the legwork. We've got all the data. So we want to help you with that. Okay. Now we're going to go to the sample form, and this is the bulk of the time. I'm going to try and make this understandable. It's a little bit confusing. I'm going to start by explaining there are 3 forms. There's the loan forgiveness calculation form, and then there's Schedule A, and then there's worksheet 1 or the Schedule A worksheet. So we're going to bounce back and forth between the three pages because you need to kind of go up and back to get there. What I'm showing you on the screen right now starts about halfway down the forgiveness form. All the stuff above it is all demographic information: name, federal ID number, loan amount. That's all. There's no math in that. You guys are just going to have that, or your bank will have it for you. So try and stay with me on this. I'm going to do my best to make it clear, but it's as clear as mud sometimes. We're going to start with the first section of the forgiveness form, which is payroll and non-payroll costs. We talked about line 2 being mortgage interest payments, which can be real or personal property, which means truck loans, trailer loans. Business rent and lease payments, 2 months worth of those. You can't pay your lease ahead, by the way, if you're renting something, you can't pay ahead and deduct it. Same thing with utilities. You can't pay the next year's worth of your cell phone to get there. But those are all fairly straightforward. The one we really got to talk about is the payroll costs, because they want you to go to Schedule A and go to line 10. It's almost like doing a tax return in a way that they keep moving you around and referring to other things. So we're going to go to Schedule A right now. This is the beginning of Schedule A, and I stopped here because they immediately want something from the worksheet. So it's like we're already drilling down into the third thing. Let's look at this. What the 3 things they're going to look for here are cash compensation, that's wages, vacation pay, whatnot, from Schedule A, which I'll show you in a minute. Average FTE, how many people are working for you, from Schedule A. And then wage reduction. And where this matters is if your wages are down more than 25%, we got to do this math of comparing how much you're down. I'm assuming for the purpose of today that that's not the case, that you're just going to be able to put a 0 in there. If that is something where your wages are significantly down, we can talk about it, but we may need to do it some other way, because they're just, you'll see it just gets more complicated. So let's go now to the worksheet for Schedule A. I tried to put up in the top there which form we're on each time. This is Schedule A. You list out your employees, how much you paid them, how much of an FTE they were. If they worked all the time, they're 1.0. FTE is full-time equivalent for those who are not familiar with the terminology. If they worked for you the whole time, it's 1. If they worked for you half the time, it's 0.5. You get the idea. And then the salary and wage reduction, which again goes to trying to determine if people had cuts in pay. And that's really what it's about. Did you cut people's hourly wage? Did you cut their salary amount? Let's hope not. But that's what that's about. So you fill all this out and you get your totals in box 1, 2, and 3. And those went in, I'm going to go back a slide. They went in here in 1, 2, and 3. And again, if you kept everybody at least 75% of their annual salary or hourly wage, you check the box and you write 0 in right there. Whoops, yeah. So just trying to let me write the 0. I want to write the 0 in there. It's not going to let me. We'll move on. So that's the Schedule A worksheet that we just talked about. Now we're going to go to the next lines because we're still trying to get to line 10. They want to know from table 2, they want to know cash compensation and FTEs. The difference between table 1 and table 2 are these the people in excess of $100,000 in pay for in 2019. And so you'll put that in there as well. Same as the first form was, there's just no reduction part because they don't care about that. And then we get down to some of the other the non-cash payroll parts. The employer contributions for health insurance. You can see where you put that in. You'll net out your you'll net out your employee contribution from what you paid. They don't specifically list whether things like dental are covered. I don't believe they are. Dental, vision, if you have other life and things. That won't be significant anyway, but you may have to parse out how much you charge for health insurance versus dental if you combine it all. And then you've got the employee retirement plan. If you've got a 401k match or simple IRA or profit sharing or any of that kind of stuff, you put that in there. And then you've got that state and local taxes. That's the state unemployment tax for most people. That's going to be it. But some local taxes on employment go in line 8. And then they added this new line. This compensation for owners was not anything they ever really talked about in any of the PPP loans things before. And then it's amounts paid to owner, employees, self-employed individual, general partners. That means owners that own that own the company. It doesn't mean owner operators. It doesn't mean other self-employed people. It means the self-employed individual would be the person filling out the form, not any self-employed individuals you may have on hauling loads for you or something like that. So you put that right in there. And then you get your total payroll costs, which remember we were trying to get to line 10, and we get there down here, and we get total payroll costs here. Doggone it, sorry. That 1, 4, 1 and 4, it says add lines 1, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9. 1 and 4 were the wages from those two tables, and then 6, 7, 8, and 9 are here. You add all that up, and you get your payroll cost number. So we've got, again, to go back to the first form that we started with, and I'm sorry if I'm losing some of you. I'm just trying to compress this into about 30 minutes. But if you've got particular questions, again, put them in the question box and we will try and address them. So you've got your payroll cost in line 10 and your mortgage interest payments and rent payments and utilities that we already did. And then we go to the next part of the calculation form, and they want to see, that was that line 3 where you had a reduction if you lowered the hourly wage, but the amount that you lowered it is going to cost you in your forgiveness amount, which hopefully you won't have that. So I'm kind of leaving that alone for now. Line 6 is add all the stuff on the prior page that we were talking about, the payroll costs and the non-payroll costs. And then the FTE reduction quotient. They want something else from Schedule A, line 13 that we're going to talk about here. If you have the same number of average hours or average employees, you can just skip these and write 1.0 in line 13, which hopefully most of you are able to do that. If not, you have to compare how many people worked for you during the reference period, which would be from last year, or how many people worked for you in the lines 2 and 5, which was the wage for the 8 weeks that we're trying to get forgiven. So again, hopefully most of you can skip this and just write 1.0. That would be ideal. If you have to go through this, then you go through it and it's going to reduce your forgiveness amount, and we'll see that here in a minute. But so that goes into that prior page where we had that FTD reduction quotient right there, FTE. We're going to need that line 7 number here, and so you multiply line 6, which was your all your eligible expenses, times line 7, which was your quotient. Again, that quotient should be 1, hopefully, if you haven't cut people loose. And then you've got your PPP loan amount, which is the amount that was funded to you originally. And then the payroll cost requirement. And what they want to do is take all your payroll costs and they divide them by 0.75, which is going to be bigger than your payroll cost because you're dividing by a number less than 1. And that's going to be the most you can get forgiven. And that was why we were talking about with the truck payments and stuff being only 25%. This is line 10 is where they do that. And so originally, let's use an example here. Let's say you got a $100,000 loan originally, and 75% of the forgiveness has to be for payroll. If your payroll is not 75,000, or your payroll costs are not at least 75,000, you're going to have a reduction in your forgiveness amount, even if you have more in rent and utilities to cover it. And even if you say, well, I only wanted 25% of the original 100 to go to utilities, I still want all of that. You're not going to get that. You're basically only going to get 1/3 of your payroll costs, that in addition to the payroll cost. It gets into some math, but that's really how it's going to come down. So if you had a loan for 100,000, at least 75 had to be payroll. If only 30,000 was payroll because you really cut back eligible payroll and things, you'd only get another 10,000 for the utilities and 40,000 total forgiven, even though you had $50,000 in eligible non-payroll costs. This is where they're going to reduce it. And then the forgiveness amount is the smallest of these three. Whichever one's the smallest, which we did the modified total with that reduction quotient, the PPP amount, and the payroll cost requirement. Hopefully, if you've been able to run, and I know it's not that simple, I know rates have gone through the floor. Just when you thought they could get no lower after going through last year, they got lower again. If you've still been running though, you should be able to recoup that money in your forgiveness number. The rest of the form is certifications. I certify I'm not lying. I certify these things like that. And so I'm not really going to go through those because you just have to agree to them to get your loan forgiven. But I wanted to go through the math, and I know this was it's disjointed. What I can do is I can fill one out, a pretend one, and I can make it available to everyone, and then you can kind of see how it all comes together in a whole page versus trying to see it on your screen with numbers in it and everything. If that will be helpful, I'll be happy to do that. You also, one of the other things too, your FTE number, if you're going to hire them back by the end of June, you can bump that FTE number up. So that's good news. Some things on how to get through the crazy coronavirus time. We really encourage 100% direct deposit. Some states you can mandate it, some states you can't, depends on where you are. Even prepaid debit cards, something, less people touching money. Money is always full of germs. Less touching cash. Make sure it gets them paid on time. Try and stay connected to your people as much as you can. All these things are things that I've said in other webinars too. It won't last forever. It's starting to open up a little bit. I know the automakers in Michigan are looking at going back, which is good news for the trucking companies around here. Trucking, I always say trucking steps up to challenges because you guys get the world thrown at you all the time. Random DOT laws that come in, random other challenges, environmental challenges, and you guys always figure it out. So I have every faith that you're going to figure this out, how to get through this crazy time. I do think this is an opportunity to look for drivers where some trucking companies are going to have laid people off. Those might be drivers you want to scoop up because you're going to need them at some point. We all know the freight demand is pent up. It's going to come out, and we're going to need to keep these trucks rolling. And that goes to the next thing. Hopefully rates will come up here once we get all these manufacturers going again. We'll be able to move rates up, and you guys can get back all that money that the brokers were killing you for those 50-cent a mile loads that I kept reading about. The last thing is just find joy where you can. It's hard. It's hard for everybody. It doesn't matter, if you know somebody who's sick or not. It's frustrating for everybody. Just try and find joy where you can. If you can go for a walk, if you can read a book, or just find inspiration and things like that. It'll make your life much better. Here's some useful links for you. Truckingpayroll.com/coronavirus. That's where I put those links. You can go get them right now, or you can wait for us to email them to you. IRS.gov/coronavirus. Things change all the time. Like at SBA.gov with the one for them too. They have frequently asked question spots, and they add stuff almost every day. So it's really worth keeping those in mind if you've got a question about any of this stuff. And the SBA, got given this 890-page law or whatever it was and had to turn it into working policy in the matter of hours. And so this is why all these things are coming out later. And that's why the banks don't want to announce a formal, here's how you're going to get your loan taken care of, forgiven, because they don't know. And so they're waiting for the SBA. But if anybody has other links, share them with me. I'll share them with the group. We're all in this together. And I think we've got 3 or 4 minutes for some questions.
Well,
Brandon, you got any good ones for me?
yeah, we got quite a few of them.
I bet we do.
So yeah, so just full disclosure to everybody, I'm going to read these in the order that they came in, and I'm kind of looking for ones that are generic and not really more specific to you. However, for those that did ask specific questions to yourself, we are going to look at each one of these questions, and either Mike or I will respond to you with an appropriate answer. So let me go ahead and get started.
That's awesome.
Can
I'm going through
you?
the list. That's amazing. Good job, you guys.
Yeah, a lot of great questions.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start here.
Yep.
Can you pay employees a bonus for working during this time and include that as a payroll cost?
Bonuses are okay, and I should preface this with the SBA could change everything tomorrow. But my understanding from what I've read is that you can pay bonuses and include it in payroll costs. I'm gonna go somewhere that maybe you were going and maybe you weren't, but if I owned a trucking company and I had money that I was not going to get forgiven and I could get it forgiven, I can either give it to my employees or pay it back to the bank. I'm giving it to my employees every single time. There's no question there. Who would I rather have to have the money, the feds or my employees? And so if you're going there, I would suggest the same thing. As always, check with your bank and don't go over the 100 grand annualized.
I'm going to go ahead and kind of combine here. Does cell phone count as as expenditures? And can per diem be included in the wages compensation calculation? Per diem is a big one I wanted to get on.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I meant to touch on that. So thank you for asking that question. We'll start cell phones. Yeah, those are utilities. Almost nobody has landlines anymore. So I would count cell phones. Per diem, I would not count. I don't think that the banks will allow it because I don't think the SBA will allow it. Per diem is one of those funny things that is really like the way that we do per diem in trucking is different than anybody else does it. And it's really a reimbursement. We treat it as a reimbursement for expense for meals and incidentals, and those are not things that are listed as utilities, and so they would not be covered. Per diem is still worthwhile to pay because you save on your FICA and you save on all these other things. They shouldn't have included it in your loan calculation, but maybe they did because the rules weren't really clear. My advice would be if you're not going to make your full loan amount because of per diem, I would try it and see if the bank will take it. And if the bank takes it, you're home free. If they don't, then maybe the amount of your forgiveness gets reduced, or you I'm trying to think of how to put this. You could bonus it, like you could almost undo the per diem if you had to. I wouldn't really recommend it, but if you stopped paying per diem for a couple of months because then your driver's paychecks are going to go down, you might need to make it up to them somehow. We have a great webinar on per diem at truckingpayroll.com/tips. We go through this and how it saves the trucking company money and puts money in your driver's pockets. Great recruiting tool, by the way. But I wouldn't do that unless I was going to make them whole. If you want, reach out to me. We can talk about more details of it. I don't want to, I know we have other questions to get to. I think it's an awesome question. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me or we'll reach out to you and we can have a conversation about it.
Yeah, great answer. And yes, definitely let us know about the per diem questions. How does a driver who is let go because of, let's say, a false accident or failing a drug test, how does that affect FTE, the full-time equivalency?
Well, hopefully you replace the driver. That would be the first thing. That's the first goal, of course, is to replace. If you replace the driver, then you're going to have another partial FTE besides it. Unfortunately, if you just, let's say you had 5, I'm going to make your company small. I don't even know who asked the question and how many trucks you have or anything, but let's say you had 5 drivers and one of them failed the drug test, and so you had to let them go, and now you're down to 4. You're at 80% on the FTEs. You just are. If you didn't replace them at all, I would hire somebody and try and replace that FTE, even if it wasn't a driver. You know, it doesn't, there's nothing in here that says that it's got to be by department. So if you replace the driver with another admin person, even if it was just for the for the 8-week period. If there was something you always wanted to get done, hire an employee to build your website, or hire an, whatever, you'll get the money back. So just something to consider. It does stink though. I see what you're saying. It's not like you wanted to term the driver, and it wasn't coronavirus related. They just didn't pass a drug test. So yeah, that's a tough situation. Hopefully you were able to replace them enough to get your loan forgiven.
I've just kind of two questions, really not really questions, but they're more suggestions. If you could actually go ahead and do the sample completed form, a lot of people think that would be exceptionally helpful. So
I would have done it before I actually thought about it as I'm trying to explain it. And I'm like, I bet I'm losing people because I'm bouncing between forms, and I couldn't think of a better way to present it. But what I will do is have a completed one, and we'll either email it out to you or send you a link to our website where you can find it. And we'll send out, like, it's going to be a small company, like 6 employees or something, just to make the math work. But yeah, we'll
okay.
absolutely do that. We'll do that for everybody because I think it's really important.
All right, perfect. How many more you want to do?
See, it's about 5 after 1. We try to keep these things to 30 minutes. We've already blown past that. We'll pick 2 more, and everybody else who asked a question, we will answer it. It just won't be during the webinar.
Okay. All right, here's one. And to be honest with you, I was a little confused on this, so I just kind of want to make sure about it. If your loan was used 100% for payroll only, is it 100% forgived or still only 75% forgiven?
Awesome question. Yes, you have to use at least 75% of the loan for payroll costs. So, and the way the loan went originally, it was about 2.5 months worth of payroll expenses in the past, and they're only forgiving 8 weeks. So that left another about 2.5 weeks. That would be the utilities and the rent and all that stuff. Now, if your company's growing because it was bigger than it was last year, then you're going to run out that payroll anyway. So if you're 100%, if your loan was 100,000 and you have $100,000 in payroll expense, you're good to go.
Okay, let me do this one. It'll probably be the last one, but a lot of people have asked this. Workers' compensation, is that included in the forgiveness as well? Workers'
No,
comp?
no, health insurance is, but not workers' comp, which again, it's one of those things where, okay, I'll use us as an example. We're an office. We don't have truck drivers. We've got office people. My workers' comp rate is next to nothing. It's a rounding error, just about. So it wasn't significant. And for most office people, it's not significant. Now, manufacturing people, it's more. And as you guys know who do the work comp things, the shop pays a little more than the office, and the drivers you pay more on the drivers than you do on the shop. But it's not, because it's not significant to a lot of other people, you're not getting that back in the PPP forgiveness, unfortunately. And it's too bad, but yeah, at least you're still getting, it shouldn't have been included in the original calculation either when they figured out your loan amount. So you should be set to go there. But yeah, no, workers' comp's not the workers' comp premium is not included, unfortunately.
However, for those individuals who are asking about workers' comp, if you're looking at a way to possibly save some money on that, reach out to us. We'd be happy to look at possibly your per diem plan as a solution for that.
Yeah, that's a great point. There are a lot of options there. That's where per diem really pays off. I'm going to spoil my own webinar. But yeah, that's awesome. I see there are a lot of other questions. I want to answer them all. I cannot do that right now because we're out of time, and I really try to keep these to half an hour, and we're at 36, 37 minutes. So, but I will answer everybody back via email, and what I will do too is we'll compile all these questions. We won't name names, and if you put personal information in there about your company, we might change it to, so nobody can identify you, but we'll send the questions and answers to everybody. That way, because other people's questions might benefit you, and that might be something, oh yeah, I should have thought to ask that. I know when I'm in things like this, I learn more from other people's questions than any question I ever have. So, but we'll get those out probably by tomorrow. I know a lot of you are going on the holiday weekend, but it's trucking, so you really never get a holiday, but at least you won't be in the office hopefully much on Monday. So enjoy the long weekend. Hopefully the weather's great, and hopefully you're all safe and healthy, and we'll keep getting through this. But yeah, thank you so much for coming to do the webinar here. We really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Here's
Thank you.
our contact information. You can reach out to us. There's our Facebook and our YouTube. We don't charge for the webinars. However, if you wanted to do me a solid, that YouTube link, click on it and subscribe. If I get to enough subscribers, I get to shorten that nonsense on the end and just make it like STPS instead of use uppercase U, uppercase C, CKV, 6F, blah, yuck. So you want to pay me? That's the way you do it. We put 1 minute trucking tips there. We put the webinars there. It's all free. You don't have to give us your email address or any of that stuff. We don't make you register. So with that, I think we're going to need to end the webinar for now. Thank you so much for attending. We'll get the slides out to everybody and answer your questions as quickly as we can. Be safe and have a great day.